call this meeting, special call meeting of the Williamsburg-James City County School Board to order. Ms. Alla, will you take the roll?
Dr. Cavazos.
Present.
Ms. Chen.
Here.
Mrs. Donner. Mr. Hosang.
Here.
Mrs. Hunley.
Here.
Mr. Riffle.
Present.
Mrs. Ortego.
Here. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Madam Chair, I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Riffle. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Hunley.
Mr. Riffle.
Aye.
Dr. Cavazos.
Aye.
Ms. Chen.
Aye.
Mrs. Donner.
Aye.
Mr. Hosang. Mrs. Hunley.
Aye.
Mrs. Ortego.
Aye. All right. We will briefly discuss item 2.01, approval of fiscal year 2026 budget.
I have to read first.
Okay.
As a member of the School Board of Williamsburg, James City County, I acknowledge that I may have an interest in the FY26 school budget because my husband's an employee of the Williamsburg, James City County Schools. However, I believe that I am able to participate in the consideration of and vote on the budget fairly, objectively, and in the public interest.
Thank you, Mrs. Hunley. And we'll turn it over to Dr. Keever.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us to have a final discussion on the budget before adoption or approval this evening. Ms. Ewing has put together a few slides. You have seen this information previously throughout our discussions dating all the way back to January, but we wanted to capture it in one place one more time so that it was in front of you before you took action this evening. Renee?
Thank you, Dr. Keever. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the board. On February 18th, we presented the superintendent's proposed budget, and during the March 18th work session, we shared recommended adjustments to that proposal. This afternoon, I will walk through those adjustments briefly prior to the board voting on the budget. The superintendent's proposed budget totaled $197,090,500, and the modifications that we shared last week include reducing the amount for health insurance by $1.5 million, which is based on the estimated cost with the Anthem plans that was approved last week. This is based on a 7% increase in healthcare costs shared with employees on a 70-30 split. Further reducing the bus driver FTEs by 5, which is a reduction of $175,000. And lastly, reducing contracted services by $183,000. This would bring the board's budget total to $195,232,500. The superintendent's proposed budget included an increase in state revenue of $2,361,000, and the modifications we shared last week include budgeting sales tax at 99% of the estimated amount instead of 97%, which is based on the projection for the current year and the past 2 years of actuals. This is an increase of $348,500. And the second adjustment amounts to $250,000 and is related to state revenue that we receive for certain special education students. This adjustment is based on the average amount over the past 3 years, as well as our approved amount for the current year. With these adjustments, this would bring our state revenue increase to $2,959,500. The superintendent's budget proposal included a request of our funding partners of $13.9 million. With the expenditure adjustments and state revenue adjustments I just outlined, the impact would be a reduction in the request to the localities by $2.5 million, making the request just under $11.5 million, which represents a 10.7% increase above the current fiscal year. The total of all funds, including operating grants, state-operated programs, and child nutrition services funds, amounts to a total of $212,114,730 for fiscal year 2026, with the adjustments to the operating fund as presented. We'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions from board members? Any comments? I do want to address the late-breaking news, or maybe it's not news yet. We had also been discussing potentially more revenue or more money coming in from the state once the General Assembly finished their budget. That's not really complete yet.
Correct.
So we ideally we were hoping to bring that down under 10, but we won't know that. And some things are being shifted around at the moment, so that's very uncertain. But our goal as a board was to get it under 10. which possibly will still happen, but we can't know that, so. Any other questions or comments from the board?
I
Ms.
just want
Donner?
to say thank you. I know you've been working on this since, I don't know, November, December. It's been a really long time.
October.
October.
It was October. Yeah.
And just a lot of moving around and having to do a lot of guessing as to what would happen with the state budgets and a huge ask and the things that we've been asking for in questions. So I just appreciate all that you've done, Mrs. Ewing.
Thank you. Well, if there are no questions or discussion or comments, we can move into the vote. I just want to make sure everyone has a chance to make a comment if they would like to.
I just want to say one thing. My original reason not to approve the 13 million request from our funding partners was because the number of students hadn't changed over the past 3 or 4 years. It still had about 11.3 thousand. And so I'm thinking, why are we spending more money to educate the same number of people? And I'm not enough of a budget wizard to figure that out. It wasn't obvious to me in all the presentations. So I kind of did my own accounting, and I'm noticing that the special ed students and the English second language student population continues to increase, and they require a certain amount more money. I don't think it takes up the entire budget difference, but there is a much increase in the amount of money to educate those kids. So I think with that in mind, I have a more favorable view of the budget.
Thank you, Dr. Cavazos. Any other comments? All right. Once, going twice. Is there a motion to approve the budget?
Madam Chair, I move to approve the fiscal year 2026 budget in the amount of $212,114,730, which includes $195,232,500 for the operating fund, $6,768,830 for the grants fund, $1,330,600 for the state operated programs fund, and $8,782,800 for the Child Nutrition Services Fund.
Thank you, Mrs. Donner. Is there a second?
A second, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Riffle. Ms. Holler?
Mrs. Donner,
Aye.
Mr. Hosang,
No.
Mrs. Hunley,
Aye.
Mr. Riffle,
Aye.
Dr. Cavazos, Ms. Chen,
Aye.
and Mrs. Ortego.
Aye. All right. And that we will move on to adjourning. Before we adjourn, I want to read one statement if my screen will switch over. Which it's not switching. Thank you. The Williamsburg-James City County School Board will be conducting interviews for the position of superintendent at an undisclosed location within the next 15 days. These interviews will be held in accordance with the Code of Virginia, Section 2.2-3712. With that, this meeting is adjourned.